Welcome back to Common Ground, an inside look at Suffolk County. I'm your host, Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Now, on this side of the program, we have State Representative Russell Holmes, who is from the Sixth Suffolk. And you know what? If you know Russell, well, of course you know Russell. He is one workaholic. This young man gets a lot done for you, for me, for the communities in southeastern Massachusetts. He's just an all-around good guy and quite an intelligent guy. And I'm not saying that just because he's sitting next to me. I'm saying that because it's the truth. Thank you so much for coming through, brother.
Thanks for having me
Really
over. Appreciate
it. Talk to us about why, first of all, you got into politics, because your background is in finance.
It is.
Right. What happened that said to you, you need to be the people's representative?
It's an interesting question because I got into it from a confrontation, actually. I very much wanted to advocate and have a win for what was called 28X.
Which was?
Which was a busway right down the heart of Louisville Avenue. And so some of the elected at the time were very much against it. And I sat on a group of us who worked on it and said, yes, we think it's a good idea. But eventually it was decided not to be approved by some of the local folks. And it was a process that I enjoyed just being a part of, and said, hey, when Representative Allen retired, I said, that looks like the type of thing I would like to be involved in. And so that's really what motivated me. I said, yes, I want to be one of the voices that are heard at the State House. I had actually never been to the State House before until 2 weeks before I was elected. Okay. So I knew what the roles were, but I had never really gone and lobbied at the State House, and only visited just before I was elected.
Had you ever been in any type of office like that, either in college or in high school?
Not at all. Not at all. Never.
So it just came out of the blue?
Just a community activist looking to improve the neighborhoods from small things like just doing neighborhood cleanups. I chaired a couple boards for the mayor at the time, like bringing the Mattapan Library there, and something called MEDI, which was a look at how do we improve all economic development throughout Mattapan.
Okay.
So that's what helped bring the Mattapan main streets and things of that nature to the community. But I had never decided I wanted to run for political office. The representative retired. I got a couple phone calls, and folks said, we think you'll be a good fit. I said, I agree, and got home with my wife, and we just said, we're in.
Right.
And that's how we got into it.
So, well, just for the folks that are watching, so you never held elective office, you never ran for elective office, you'd never been to the State House. Just briefly talk to us about the putting together a campaign and running a campaign for elective office.
So it began for me with a kitchen cabinet, as they say, which was my wife, my mom, my dad, and then so much of it for me was the church community. So I have a very strong connection with obviously my congregation, then my dad's congregation, and then just other neighborhood folks like that are very active in the church community that began that groundswell of, yes, we believe in your values. And I just have stayed true to the values of saying we began with the kitchen cabinet, we are neighborhood people, and we just wanted to just have a stronger voice. And so I literally just called what I call with my top 10, the folks, because I was very active in the neighborhood. I called the top 10 and said, listen, I'm thinking about putting together something, will you be with me? And to my surprise, 8 of those 10 says, we're with you.
Okay.
And I announced obviously that Representative Allen was retiring because most of them were very strong.
You're talking about Willie Mae Allen.
Yes, Representative Allen's, they were her constituents, and so they were surprised, some of them, that she was retiring, but said, yes, we think you would be a great fit.
Oh, so you called them before she let people know that she was?
Well, she announced, but lots of folks are not just politically involved. I would call some of what I call the top 10 of people who were just very, very active in the neighborhood and said, Miss Allen's retiring. I'm looking to run in that seat. And they said, yes, we'll help you out.
So it's one thing to be a community activist.
Yep.
It's something entirely different to actually run for office. Did you find that it was a daunting task once you got out there and you started walking the streets, knocking on doors, talking to your neighbors?
Sure.
Did you find that as something that was daunting, or was that something that you really enjoyed and knew that you were in the right space at that time?
I knew I was in the right space. So again, to me, it's God-driven from my perspective. It just all felt natural. It felt it was the right time between my careers of financial advice. I had done robotics for a while. Okay. I've been, as I said, very active in the community. I've also just been really strong just in teaching at churches. So I took the financial literacy, and I went to Concord Baptist, which was where my dad is one of the deacons.
Yep.
And I had worked a lot with them, just with lots of the men's group. And so it was just kind of natural that if I'm doing all of these things, my wife would say, if I'm doing all of these things for free, why not do some of them and get paid, quite frankly. And so it was just a natural fit. And so talking to people through some of the debates around the library, some of the debates around economic development, some of the debates around even 28X, folks had seen me just in the neighborhood. And I didn't realize that some folks were even saying, hey, I should run. Like, it was a surprise to me when I made one of the phone calls was to Garrett Kincaid, who unfortunately had passed away. He was one of the first folks who said, we believe, he and his wife, I should have been running from the beginning. And they saw that long before I decided to run.
So now you get in, you're state rep. Talk to us about the committees that you work on and the issues, the burning issues that are very important to you.
Sure. I began, of course, unfortunately, I ran, not unfortunately, but when I ran around transportation.
Right.
I ran around education. I ran around saying I'm going to be a strong voice of taking our voice to the neighborhood, from the neighborhood up to the State House. But unfortunately, 2 weeks after I was elected, the Wilson murder happened. And so literally you have someone bring 4 people in the middle of the street and almost killed the 5th person as well. Essentially thought they had killed all 5. And quite frankly, that has been the thing that has been my guiding light ever since, because of the fact that it sends me in a direction that says public safety is just at the paramount of all the things that I do. So even the transportation, education, all of those things really roll up into the fact that Wilson Street is the first street I see. So when I come down from my street, I live on Goodale. The first street I see every day other than mine is Wilson.
Right.
And so it's just a constant reminder of how we have to just make sure that there are other opportunities for folks to think of other than the criminal life.
Okay.
I unfortunately lost one of my family friends growing up. Her son was visiting that house that night. And so unfortunately, he was there visiting, wasn't even one of the active players, but was escorted out and shot in the middle of the street. And so that helps to really define what it is that I focus on every day, about just saying, let me make sure that I remember that the consequence of not having some of the right priorities in my district.
What other issues?
So
Public safety.
Of course, I think economic development is important. When I drive up and down Blue Avenue, I still see some of the problems that were created 50, 60 years ago, from riots and the white flight, for not a better word. You know, it's interesting to me that I'll be in a neighborhood meeting, or I'll be just out talking about things in the district, and someone will say, hey, I grew up on the street next to yours. I grew up on Ormond. I grew up on Daring. And when I first got elected, it was a surprise to me that most of those folks were white. And then even deeper, obviously, it was mostly Jewish, or almost all Jewish, the neighborhood. So economic development is, to me, I want to get Blue Avenue back to as strong as it was when the Jewish community really were the folks who were from Mattapan. And so we've been doing a lot through some of the Main Streets efforts, and even some of the conversations that are happening now around the Olympics. I'm saying, if you're looking at things to come into my neighborhood, you can't just show up with the Olympics without some infrastructure being built out. And so I've been pushing some of the folks who've been talking about the Olympics to really do kind of a mini Main Streets up and down Blue Avenue. If you want to even, so I know some folks have talked about potentially Franklin Park with some resistance. Some folks have been talking about Harambe Park, which is really in the heart of my district.
Right.
If that were the case, we just don't have the businesses yet today to really handle some of the infrastructure.
So let me offer you this, because I've heard this quite frequently of late with the Ferdinand building, which is now the Bruce Boulding Municipal Building. Once that opened up, that some of the residents in that community and some of the shop owners in that community may be pushed out because prices will escalate and get too high to either rent or buy homes or have businesses there. Do you think that is the case? And if that is, how do we remedy that?
So one of the things I also do is fortunately have the honor of now being the chair of the Black and Latino Caucus. And so literally the thing that I was doing before I came here is we were looking at how do we move some pieces of legislation and what will our legislative priorities be for the next session. Even though obviously the session began in January, we've been primarily focused on the budget until now. And the issue of gentrification, the issue of economic empowerment are some of the things we spent most of the time today on. And so I will say, yes, we do know that there's the potential of some folks moving out, but we have to do things such as be smart around how we do some of the economic development and building around housing. And so Senator Ford and I have looked at how do we deal with some of the surplus properties that are along some of the transit lines.
Right.
And how do we give some advantage to some of these surplus property that the state may own, that we can make sure that you put a restriction for affordable housing, and really not just affordable housing, but how do we make sure that a working family be able to afford this? That is one of the things that we know we have to do to make sure that we don't have folks leave. We have a site, not in my district, but literally where I grew up, is over on Cummings Highway, where Cody Ford has been just a dilapidated site for, I would say, 30, 35 years. I know exactly how long.
Right.
But we just, in the last couple of days, the city announced that it's gonna, the awardee is gonna be HAFI, which is a Haitian American group. It's gonna be AFL-CIO and the Boys and Girls Club, with some transit-oriented development that has a large component of affordable housing. What we saw, I'm the vice chair of the housing committee, and what we heard today, just having some of the folks from the governor's office and some of the other lead folks around housing, is that there is a major need for not just affordable housing, but in particular there's a major need for that middle income housing. But it needs to come in a way that we're not accustomed to in Mattapan. Mattapan in particular is used to building single family homes.
Okay.
Just everywhere in the neighborhood is just a single family. And what the Cody Ford site is one of those first opportunities of saying we're going to have middle class housing that is going to be built with multi-units, and so potentially 100 units are coming there for middle class housing. And that's not unusual in Roxbury and closer to the city, but we have to start to get accustomed to it a little bit farther out in the Mattapan, Dorchester area.
So, years ago, probably 6, 7, maybe a little bit longer, I read an article in the Boston Globe that talked about Mattapan Square and talked about making that kind of a walking area, and cobblestone streets, and rezoning that area, because right now it's just retail.
Yep.
Rezoning that so that you can have dwellings, livable dwellings up over that. One, have you heard anything about that? And two, do you think that would be a wise thing to do?
So what we did, as I mentioned, I chaired what's called the Mattapan Economic Development Initiative. That was one of the recommendations.
Oh, okay.
To have commercial on the first level and some residential above.
Right.
And we did rezone. So one of the things that's already
been done.
It's already been done.
Okay.
And so what we also recommended was transit-oriented development near that Cody Ford site. And we're bringing a train station. So at the Blue Hills Cummings intersection, or in that space where you have Woodhaven that connects Blue Hill and Cummings, we are going to build a train station that's going to be connected on the Fairmont line. So it is the last of those stations that brought Four Corners, Talbot Ave, and Bowdoin, Geneva.
Is the financing in place for that?
So we already started the process.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Construction should begin next year. It was delayed because there was just some resistance in the neighborhood around really this issue of, yes, we hear loudly that we need more housing, but folks are accustomed to what they're accustomed to. And to bring more people into a neighborhood that is primarily single families, there was some resistance to it, and it still is. I mean, because now you're bringing a train station in that we're bringing a train station in that's going to obviously bring more people, and it's going to bring potentially that demand for that large transit-oriented development at the Cody Ford site. And that's some of the concerns that the neighborhood was concerned about. I mean, it's literally the neighborhood I grew up in. And folks are just accustomed to not many people, this small feel of just neighborhood folks. And now we're going to bring potentially to that site all commercial on the first level, and then an awful lot of units above. And we're going to have to see how that goes. I firmly feel that will be the nexus of us being able to move and connect Mattapan Square a little bit farther down, so you can have a little bit more retail other than just in Mattapan Square. I just think also the main streets in Mattapan Square you're going to see a lot of effort there as well, because I think Tina's doing, the person who runs the main street, and the board are doing a great job of using some of the anchor properties on the edges. And then also obviously ASI and Mattapan Health Center to begin to build out just how do we want the entire square to look.
It's interesting because I go through there often, and this sounds ambitious, it sounds encouraging. Clearly, I don't live in Mattapan Square, right off of Mattapan Square, so I understand what the homeowners are saying about that. But that said, I think that's a vibrant area that could be a lot more utilized. And I frankly, and I'm not trying to be facetious, I'd love to see those metal grates that are in front of
Sure.
all of the shops go away.
Well, you're going to see some of them go away. I mean, that's part of the whole thought of what's happening in Mattapan is how do we make sure we come with uniformity to start to define what the district looks like. And then how do we encourage really, what we really want is clearly in every survey that we've done, since the Medi and every other one, are some real nice sit-down restaurants. And we may have one coming. I can't tell you who it is, but we have one that we think would be
Right in the square?
Right in the square.
That would be great.
What Brigham's used to be.
That would be great. Oh, yeah, right,
It's
okay.
a great
It's a good
spot.
size site.
Of course,
yeah.
because now that it's been enlarged by the former tenant, it's a great place. It's right there in the corner. And you think about it is the entrance of the city.
Yeah.
It is also an awful lot of folks in Milton could just come right over the line instead of going down the South Shore.
Yeah.
And then, quite frankly, when it's time for me to take my wife out to dinner, I'm many times
place in the
heading
neighborhood.
past Mattapan Square. I'm heading down to the mall, I mean, to Legals or whatever down. And that's a much longer drive than if I could just go down to Mattapan Square. And so you can see also that we in the state are bringing our own resources. So we are upgrading the entire Neponsit Greenway. We're spending $12 million to have it so that you can walk and bike all the way from Milton through Mattapan Square, all the way through Center Street, all through Milton, all the way in town. We're doing that work now. And then even if you recall the old furniture store that was there right beside the bridge, we bought that facility. We knocked down the old dilapidated parts of it and reinforced the stronger part of the building that really had the strong architectural design to it. And then we've just planted trees, and just you can see that corner is so much stronger at River Street. You're going to see in the coming months that the other side of that corner is going to be much more attractive. I mean, the property owners have done an excellent job. The mayor was there 2 weeks ago or so as we were looking to say we want to enforce the board stronger so that you have 5 property owners, 5 business owners, 5 residents, because you want a vested person on the board to just, groups to say, listen, we want to improve all of Mattapan Square. I think that's the anchor of how we can then start at Mattapan Square and move it down the Ave. Yeah. Because of the fact that that's the core that we have to build.
That whole Blue Hill Avenue corridor is going to be, I think, remarkably changed within the next 3 years. I mean, and it sounds like that's what you folks are working on. Now, along that stretch, there are 2 organizations, or at least 2 that I know that you've been actively involved with, and one is Sportsman's Tennis Club and the other is Lena Park. Talk to us about what you did with those folks and where they're at.
So with Sportsman's in particular, that was the place that I learned to play tennis. Most of us from the neighborhood.
I thought golf was your game.
Yeah, I'm a golfer now, there's no doubt. But it's where I learned to play tennis. It's, I don't play much tennis anymore, but they had, I think, originally built the building in 1974. And they hadn't done much in capital improvements since then. And so when right after I got elected, I talked to Tony, and Tony says, listen, we still have problems with just changing the light bulbs, because when they initially did it, they just put up nice lights and they just assumed they were going to stay there, and they were actually having to rent a lift to change the light bulbs. And so she came and said, we have to do something about this. We have to, one, change the layout of the facility. And they had never gotten state funding before. And so we, in the first year, were able to get $250,000, which was a matching grant that we had others match that were private funders. And we unfortunately got a 9C cut that was cut in half. But each year since then, we've managed as a state now to deliver about $400,000, and that's been matched. Not just $400,000, but that encouraged private folks to put even more in. And so we're going to actually have a major opening on June 9th to show what the capital improvements that have been done, and I certainly hope and encourage people to come out and see. Sportsman's is a neighborhood place. Obviously, there are many folks from around the entire region that use Sportsman's, but it would be great to see more of us in the building.
How about Lena Park?
And Lena Park was a place where obviously it just went defunct on us one day. We just show up and all of a sudden it's no longer there. And so.
And what was it? It was a community center?
It was a community center that was there. Had what a rich history of a community center for even for daycare and things of that nature. Unfortunately, fortunately, they still had some properties and a board that looked to still manage the property, but the building itself just folks showed up and it was shut down. We had the good fortune of having the Brooks Charter School, which was on Cummings Highway and has a strong reputation really around the state for performance, decided they would like that location. And so essentially the board decided, and the CAC, which is a community organization that looks over the entire old state hospital ground site, they came to a good resolution that half the building, so if you go there, the taller side of the building is the new Brooks Charter School.
Right.
And so they sold that half of the building, and then they used some of those proceeds to improve the other half of the building. And so in the last less than a month, we opened up the entire building. So Lena Park, the community center, is now up and running. And then the school started in September, and it's been doing very well as well. So when you go by Lena Park, you now see a vibrant, strong building with two really condominiums, really two owners or occupiers of the building that I think are going to be there for a long time.
Talk to me about, or talk to the audience about how we get more folk of color involved in the political mainstream of the Commonwealth.
So it is a challenge. What we thought we had done a couple years ago when we did redistricting was there was a major push by the speaker and by the chair at the time of redistricting, Moran, from the Brighton area, to say this time when we do redistricting, we're going to make sure we listen to the neighborhoods. And so we went out, and Kevin Peterson and some others really went out to look at how do they relay some of the districts to have it so that we can get the maximum amount of folks of color with majority color districts. I think that group came up with 19 House seats, and Moran and the team were able to devise 20. So you now had 20 opportunities where folks of color were the largest voting age population. And so we believe that's where you begin. You have it so that even if you don't have folks of color elect someone who's of color, you still have them have a stronger voice. I think naturally that moves to more folks of color being elected. We just have to be somewhat careful about how we push out folks who may be white and represent a majority seat of color. Is not our intention literally as a caucus to say, oh, because you're white you don't have the same values. But to have us have a stronger voice will probably lead, in our belief, to more representation on the Hill. And that's very important, to have it so that our issues are at the forefront of the things that the Speaker and the Senate President are considering.
You like politics?
I love it.
Why?
It's so similar to my other job in that my other job is finance, and I manage money for folks. And I really get to sit across the table very much like this and help people one by one. Hey, here are some of the things and challenges that are happening. I think it fits very well with politics because at the political level, I get to help a larger set of people. So I really love that I'm able to, in one career, help one-on-one, and in one career see how I'm able to help 1,000 by 1,000 and have the greatest amount of impact. And so, as you said in your intro, I'm still going to all my own neighborhood meetings. People find that strange, that I don't send staff, because I think people elect me and not my staff. And so I still feel like when I get tired of going to my own neighborhood meetings and hearing directly from people, it's time for me to leave politics.
So what's your preference, chess or checkers?
I am definitely a checker person.
Really?
Yes.
No kidding. I thought you would have said chess.
Of course you thought I would. It's too much work to learn all of the chess pieces.
Oh my God.
So I play.
But that's what you do. You're a hard worker.
Yes, but I have to figure out where I'm going to spend my time. Do I want to spend my time learning more golf, or do I want to spend my time
no, of course.
Yes,
right.
yes.
So listen, as we close out here, tell folks how they can get in touch with you if they want more information from you or what it is that you do, and how they can help you get done what you're trying to get accomplished.
So the way to reach me in the office is 617-722-2220. That's the office line. And then they can, of course, reach out to me at russell.holmes@mahouse.gov. And I think the way to help me most is to still just stay engaged. As chair of the caucus, we have, with the former governor leaving, it's clear to folks of color that we are the folks you're normally going to reach out to. And so we've had a lot of folks reach out to the caucus now. So you can reach out also through CBU at the Black and Latino Caucus website as well. Beautiful. Thanks for coming on, Russ. Really appreciate it. We'd love to have you back some point in the future. Okay? Of course. All right, folks, look, that's it for today. We're out of time. We're out of here. We'll be back again next week. Until then, you take care of yourself. Peace.